we have, as we have in the past, we have invitations that you can send out to people that you would like to attend the gala. I send these out to about 10 or 15 of my closest friends, and they're still friends. J Yard has a good stock of these, so feel free to get as many as you need to send out. And he also has additional copies of this brochure, which was, there was one copy in your package, but if you'd like to have more copies to leave with people that you're calling on, gives all the details, tells about the beneficiaries, and highlights the sponsors as well. No, it doesn't. I take that back. But it gives a good description of the 3 beneficiaries for this year. So if you need more of those, CJ after the meeting. And Gail?
Thank you, Ron. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Next week, we are going to have Cheryl Rauch and Laura Gasparo come, and they are going to do a very brief PowerPoint on the what every senior needs to know before entering college, which is one of our beneficiaries through Hudson Community First. So they now have an outline of exactly what is going to happen, who the speakers are, the date, the time, and all that sort of thing. So since they are one of our major beneficiaries, we thought it would be great to learn more details about this program. So I'm really, really happy, and Dave has accorded us a few minutes to take care of that. That brochure, I have some more copies of the brochure too, or I can email it to you if you would like to have it. I can email it to you in a PDF file, the marketing brochure. And that's it. Thank you.
Just one other thing. Oh, go ahead and clap for her. The following week, Ken Fogel will be here to talk about Gift of Life Northeast Ohio and what's happening with that program. And he's got a new 5-minute video, and then he'll say a few words. But they're changing a little bit of direction, but there's still, actually there's a little girl that's over here, I think right now, or else coming next week for heart surgery. So he'll be here to talk about that program as well.
Good. Oh, we should clap for him.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Gail. It is now 7 weeks and counting, I believe, to the gala. So clock is winding down or winding up, depending on how you look at it. So appreciate everybody's efforts as we continue to march forward. It's the signature event for our club. It's our best fundraiser. It's our most significant fundraiser for the year. And obviously, very worthwhile signature beneficiaries for the event. Any updates or announcements from members on the floor? Okay, I'll turn it over to George to introduce our speaker. George?
Thank you, David. Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning, George. In the late 19th century, Dr. Benjamin Franklin Goodrich, followed by Harvey Firestone and then by Frank Seiberling, founded companies that by 1910 had made Akron the rubber capital of the world. And also, as I learned in a little research, Akron also in the year 1910 became the fastest growing city in America. In the late 1920s, Hudson resident and Goodrich scientist Waldo Seaman discovered a way to plasticize polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, making Akron a center of polymer innovation as well. Deeply associated with this distinguished tradition is the University of Akron. Today it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Eric J. Amos, who is the Dean of the College of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering at the University of Akron, and who is also the university's Vice Provost for Research. Dr. Amos came to Akron in 2014 from United Technologies Research Center in Hartford, where he was Director of Physical Sciences, leading a team of some 140 scientists and engineers who conducted a wide range of applied research in advanced manufacturing and related fields. Before joining United Technologies in 2009, he spent 15 years in leadership roles at the National Institute for Science and Technology's Material Science and Engineering Laboratory, and before that taught at the University of Wisconsin. He taught at the University of Southern California. He earned his PhD in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Amos is a member of the Connecticut Academy of Science and Engineering and is a fellow of the American Chemical Society, the Materials Research Society, and the American Physical Society, among others. For 11 years, he was editor-in-chief of the Journal of Polymer Science Physics. He's also the author of 150 peer-reviewed scientific publications and has broad research interests. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Eric J. Amos.
Well, thank you very much, George, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. I've been now in Akron for almost 3 years, coming up this summer, and it's been very exciting to learn more and more about this region, Northeast Ohio, and what all makes up the nature of the history and the connectedness of this region. And of course, you know, for me, coming to Akron was for the purpose of joining the Polymer College. It's an international draw, and it's a place that I have known about since I was a graduate student. Frank Kelly has been a friend for since those days. In fact, I still have lunch with him about once a month, and he was in my office yesterday, in fact, and we were discussing it again. And I was always impressed with what Akron was able to do, and I don't think I completely understood how this outpost developed. And that's where some of the history that was just mentioned really comes into play. So I have a talk here which will go through some of the history, what I refer to now as our legacy, and also talk some about the future and where we see the opportunities for us to be moving forward in advancing the science, advancing technology, and making a difference for Ohio and nationally, and in fact internationally. Sometimes one student at a time, but sometimes one project at a time. Let's see.
Reaching here? I can advance it.
Should work. All right, why don't you hit the forward? Thank you. As was just mentioned, the history of Ohio as the rubber capital really started back in the 1800s with the founding of the 4 big tire companies in the area. And with the students from the University of Akron working, going to school in the day and working also in the rubber factories, developing that industry, and it's really the beginnings of the courses in rubber science that started at the University of Akron, the first in the world, not just the first in Ohio, not just the first in Akron, not just even the first in the United States, but the first in the world semester-long course in polymers taught at the University of Akron. And of course, this grew up even more during the war efforts when the source of natural rubber was disrupted, and so the U.S. synthetic rubber project started, the second only to the Manhattan projects in significance for the war effort. And it was right after the war, or in the early in 1951 when Auburn became president of the University of Akron, and the university was going through some challenges because of enrollment downturns, and they had a $150,000 deficit. I'm sure that was significant. But their solution at the time was to pull together and to develop a PhD program in polymer science. And that might sound like a strange idea, but it turned out to be just the right idea at the right time, because it was also the beginning. It was the Sputnik, and it was the beginning of the science push in the United States during the Cold War. And so it brought in researchers and activities for Ohio and for Akron. Next. And of course that, as the rubber companies moved, and as that technology matured, was replaced for the state of Ohio and at Akron by a polymer industry which is now enormous. It is a $1 trillion industry in the automotive sector, in aerospace, in electronics, and increasingly in medical devices. This is the iconic polymer building on campus. It houses the College of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering, which is a graduate college. We don't have undergraduate degrees. It has 350 graduate students, approximately. It has 31 faculty, exactly. And those faculty are in professional organizations that are of world nature. We have National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Inventors. We have Materials Research, Physical Society, Chemical Society, all the places that one would expect that our scientists would be, reflecting the world-class nature of the faculty in the college. We have a number of buildings. Next slide. The three of our most significant buildings here on campus. There's where the Goodyear building is. E.J. Thomas Hall is there. And right down the street, we have the Polymer Engineering building. If this is Polymer Science, this is Polymer Engineering. And then we have the National Polymer Innovation Center, which is one of our industry outreach activities. There's a couple of other buildings associated with the college. There's one that's the research building for the Polymer Engineering is there. And then we have a training facility over down the street. Next slide. Why? Why so much polymers at the university? Well, because that's where the jobs are. It's the largest manufacturing sector in the state of Ohio, is the polymer industry. 2,400 polymer-related companies in the state of Ohio, the majority of them in Northeast Ohio. 50% of North America's plastics processing occurs within 250 miles of Akron. I'm not going to claim that the University of Akron created that industry, but we certainly walked along and hand in hand as that industry grew here. Whether you're talking about rubber or whether you're talking about coatings or plastics, Ohio is #1 in terms of the number of jobs compared to all the other states. And some of them, in rubber and in coatings, it's almost by a factor of 2. When you think about rubber, you know what those companies are. When you think about coatings, you should think Sherwin-Williams, Axel Nobel. You should think PPG. PPG's right there in Pittsburgh. That's kind of Ohio, isn't it? But most of their jobs are actually in Ohio. And if you look through these, Ohio is consistently in the top 5 states in these other polymer industry market segments. So, next slide. We also are a very international college. Currently, our students come from all of these countries. This isn't one student per dot. We have many more from the United States and from Mexico. But that's where our current students come from. Where do they go? Well, oftentimes they go around the world, whether they go to Asia or whether they go to Europe or whether they stay in the United States. And the most interesting thing to me is that the very large majority of them stay in Ohio. They contribute to the state's economy. They contribute to the development of the science and technology of the state. And remember, these are graduate students. These are students with PhDs and master's degrees who are going to then be the folks who are creating the new technologies. We also have very active alumni groups in multiple countries. I've been, since I've been at the university, I have gone annually to meet with the alumni groups in Taiwan and Korea. We're starting alumni groups in 3 cities in China right now, and we have a very large number of alumni in India, which I have not yet visited, but I'm planning to go and visit them next. And one of the things that's very interesting is that the folks who are there, who are industry leaders in those countries, who are academic leaders in those countries, they have great memories of how they were treated and how they were greeted and the education they received in Akron. And they remember, even though some of them live in cities that are orders of magnitude larger than Akron, they remember fondly this area. The Korean Polymer Association is actually so infiltrated with Akron grads that one of the incoming chair of the Polymer Society there, who's from North Carolina, told me that there are just too many Akron grads. Well, that's because the past chair, the current chair, and the chair after him are all Akron grads. I thought, well, that's not too many. That's good. Okay, next slide. We also have a very strong program that for master's students that forms partnerships with universities. We have these in China and we just now last week, I think, yeah, we initiated the agreement with Taiwan. This is a program where students come over after spending 3 years of undergraduate study. They come over and work with us for 2 years. Their first year, they will get their undergraduate degree from their home institution. And this is an arrangement that we have with about 12 universities in China and now 1 in Taiwan. And the second year then, doing research here in Akron, they'll get their master's degree from the University of Akron. We've had about 300 students who've been in that program since 2011. We have about 100 currently. We bring about 50 a year. And currently about 100 students in the program. So of the 200 students, almost all of them have completed the program, so we don't have very many drop out. And of those who've completed the program, 73% have gone on and been recruited for PhD programs, mostly in the United States. But if you look at this list, it's international also. And these programs actually come and recruit our master's students on campus. Now, we take a few of these. We take about 10% into our doctoral program. But the rest of them are recruited out into PhD programs other places. This is a really important, it's an important draw for those home institutions that they come from. It's an important draw for those students. And the best thing for me is that these schools come back over and over again. They come after these master's students, so they want them to be joining their programs. We're proud of that, the success of that program. It's also a good program from a sustainability standpoint, because these the students are paying for their education. They're contributing to the growth of the research at the university. Next, please. And we have a new program that we're just starting. We'll have the first class this fall, and this is what's called a professional master's degree. The professional master's degree will actually start with an intense year of polymer science and polymer engineering, and then it will combine courses in the business school and the law school. We really believe that there will be companies that have a successful chemical engineer or chemist with a bachelor's degree who would like that person to rise up in their organization. And they usually have a couple of choices. They can send them back to get a PhD, which is a lot of work and sometimes not exactly what's needed. Or they can send them back to get an MBA, which is a lot of work and sometimes not exactly what's needed. And so what we hope is that this degree will be the medium in between. That this will be a degree that gives them the rigor of polymers, will give them the rigorous technical thinking for making decisions, and will also give them some of the business courses and the intellectual property courses, so that they'll be able to serve in supply chain or in project management. They may be technical leaders within the company. They may be in sales. They may be in marketing. Most likely, they will be the bosses for our PhDs. Who continue to want to do research and need to have some people with finance and project management who are working with them. We think if they know some polymers, if they have that technical background, they'll do a better job of that. So we're hoping that this is very successful. It models after programs that exist at Rice University in engineering and University of Pennsylvania in chemistry, but no other place has this kind of program in polymer science, polymer engineering. And there's no better place to do it than here at University of Akron. Next. We also are very active in the community reaching out, whether it's through our Upward Bound program, which has been there since 1992, our Research Experience for Undergraduates, which is the largest program in the country, Research Experience for Teachers, which affects teachers, which works with teachers who then go out and interface with students every day, through the Global Polymer Academy that was actually set up by the state a number of years ago at Akron, and has and makes visits out into local high schools, elementary schools, runs science fairs. We actually have had 20,000, on the order of, 17,000 students, teachers, and the public in 2016. This is a huge program. We ran a science fair on campus weekend before last with 680 students on campus. And then, of course, our faculty are involved with the schools that their kids go to and the schools that they've become involved with in their community, oftentimes bringing them in to have interactions on our campus, doing experiments I come in on a Sunday afternoon. They're out there setting off rockets and building polymer goop in the Goodyear building. It's pretty exciting to see the kids running around, and I just forget about the noise. It's great to have that outreach. Next, please. We also are directly involved in providing services to the polymer industry. 2,400 companies, they can't all have the same equipment that we have. They don't all have the equipment that they need. They don't all have the training for their employees, and so we run a training center that has 2 days, 3 days kind of short courses that individuals and companies can come into. We have contract research services, where some of our specialized equipment can be made available for confidential testing. And we have various kinds of processing equipment that companies can come in and make use of. These are all services that we provide because we have that expertise on campus. Next. Just a short video about the Polymer Innovation Center. So that's the newest building on in our group of buildings, and it's was funded by the Ohio Third Frontier program. It's a facility that companies can come in and use the machines, mostly for film processing, or our faculty can use the machines for film processing, or in the best case, they can work together for developing new kinds of materials. I'll show you some examples of those in just a minute. That Polymer Innovation Center is really a very active facility. It is actually only at the pilot scale. It's to take things that happen on one side of the hall on microscope slides and turn it into things that are happening 6 inches or 18 inches wide. It doesn't get up to multi-feet wide as people will be doing in real polymer processing, but it makes that transition into those kinds of real processing applications. As I've mentioned before, I think that the real reason that industry wants to come and work with us is because of our students. They want to get to know our students and they want to hire them. Oftentimes, they want to talk to our faculty too, either as consultants or as advisors, maybe through some sponsored research. They actually like to get together and talk to one another. So companies can come in and not necessarily share secrets with their competitors, but talk to their customers and talk to their suppliers. And we can do that with the networking that we build. What we really look for are strategic alliances, where we have a relationship with a company that then helps to direct the faculty who we hire, the research that we do, and the students that we train. I can continue to just train students in what the National Science Foundation thinks is important work, or I can have them directly working on industry-related problems. We'll find out, where that match is between the science that can be funded by the government and the technology that's needed to advance the next generation. And that's what we try to do with the strategic partnerships that we set up. Next slide. So these are some of the people who we have relationships with right now, who are sponsoring work or who are working on our site. These are some of the government agencies. We just recently established a new partnership with Sandia National Labs in New Mexico. And that's a partnership that has them now already. We did this agreement in November, I believe it was. We already have 4 research projects in the works, and we actually have our first joint patent with Sandia. These are other companies that we're currently working with. This is not the full list, but all of these make a big difference to us. When we're working with Cook Biotech, they're helping us to decide where we go in the next generation of biomaterials. When we're working with PPG or Sherwin-Williams or Covestro or Poly1 or Goodyear, these people are helping us to decide where should we be going with the next generation of technology that's being developed at the university. Next. This is the sort of the way of describing what we do. We go all the way from synthesis through processing to measurements and modeling. 2 departments, polymer science and polymer engineering, all of these disciplines of science and technology, and all focused on or all impacted by national needs or world needs. And these, of course, are the places where we're trying to make a difference, whether it's in energy or water, whether it's defense or whether it's health. We try to make a difference in those areas. Next. I'll show you now 3 examples of some science that we're doing and where we see that going forward. These are at a reasonably high level, and just to try to get the feel of the kind of science being done. This is work from the Biomimicry Research Innovation Center. This is a cross-disciplinary research program that links people in polymers and engineering and chemistry and biology together. And it asks the question, what can we learn from nature? Not by just looking at it, but by understanding the physics and understanding the science that's involved in how nature does things. So one example, structural color. You have all of these different birds, and they're not pigmented differently. Their color comes from nanoparticles in their wings and in their feathers. So if we look at the wing, we look at the feathers, we look inside of that, we look then at the nanostructures, and those nanostructures are what gives the colors. And the spacing of those nanostructures is what gives the variations in the colors on the birds. And it's one of the reasons why the bird doesn't always have the same color. When it's in a different environment, when you look at it differently, its colors will change. This actually is a project that we're working on with Sherwin-Williams. Now, I don't think you're going to be painting your house very soon with nanostructures to give it its color. They'll probably still be using pigments, but we certainly would like to understand the physics of color, understand the physics of how that color is developed, how the gray that's in this bird, the gray-brown in this bird feather can be made up of those nanoparticles. Next slide. And so what we've done is we've built then synthetic, what's called melanin, the nanoparticles in nature, and we've packed those nanoparticles together with different spacings, and we can get a whole range of colors from the different spacings of those nanoparticles. And if we were to dry them in a way that we get a high packing density and a low packing density, we would actually see different colors all the way along that. And now we've created then pigments that contain spacings of those nanoparticles that you can then now put in a bottle and use as regular, just like regular pigments. Not necessarily the next paint that'll be on your house, but very likely the way of understanding the colors and the variations in colors that you can see in a variety of highly technical applications. This is one example from our biomimicry research area. We have another fellow who's studying how snakes move. We have another fellow who's studying how termites build mounds that are structurally stronger than anything that humans can build. How a gecko crawls up the wall with the adhesive on the feet of the gecko. All of these kinds of things to learn from nature so that we could build better. I don't know, we're going to build snakes, but we're going to build robots. I don't know, we're going to build ant towers, but we're going to be building the next towers and the next wind turbine stations. And we're going to be building adhesives that have more and more different properties. Next slide. And this is then one of our small research classrooms where we can teach classes, use visual displays to look at the modeling of these kinds of structures. And we have in here actually 3D goggles so that a student can dig into, can walk into, can use his intuition to look at the modeling of nanostructures, or the modeling of, in this case, a water droplet landing on a surface, where it isn't just cartoons. There's actual physics of each of the interactions that goes on of that nanoparticle onto the surface. Next slide. We have a very interesting project that started only a few months ago. This is jointly with Morris Corporation, Carnegie Mellon University, University of Akron, and it's funded by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And it is, let's see, the top of the slide doesn't show it. It's called Icarus. And Icarus stands for, DARPA always comes up with fancy acronyms, Inbound Controlled Air Releasable Unrecoverable Systems. What does that mean? That means that an an unmanned deployment of a parachute that can drop in some precious cargo, maybe some vaccines, and then that parachute will go poof, completely go away. It's like Mission Impossible. Well, Carnegie Mellon has developed this depolymerizing, vaporizing polymer. We need to activate that. We'll activate that by putting in little nanowire, little silver nanowires throughout it, and put electrical field through there to make it then vaporize away. We're doing that in that Polymer Innovation Center by electrospinning, by spin casting this polymer and electrospinning the nanowire nanofibers into embedding them within that polymer film. Next slide. So there's the film. We look inside, there's the nanowires within it. There's some of those nanowires. This is the sheets of depolymerizing polymer with the embedded conductive nanowires that, when it works, we will vaporize that polymer away. And you'll be able to, and someone who wanted to would be able to deliver a cargo and disappear.
You know how many pizza delivery drivers are going to be out of business?
There we go. But you got to stick around for the tip.
Why do you want it to just?
Well, you might want to be able to deliver something that's not as benign as medicine into some place where you don't want to leave a trace. You don't want to show that you were there delivering it. This is an example of now film casting. So that's casting the film in our center. This is now electrospinning the nanowires out. The nanowires are coming out of those spinnerets, being deposited onto the film and incorporated within the film. There's the nano spinning coming out, electrospinning. And that's what we can get. We can get a surface coating of the nanowires, or we can get them embedded. That might make a difference on how the materials might be damage tolerant, or where how you might want to use this particular application. It's pretty exciting to think about that you could actually build now a structure. And maybe we start with the parachute, but what if we could build the whole plane so that it could be completely disappeared? What if it was a small glider plane that folded up and was launched out into the places that it needed to be? What if there wasn't just one of them? What if there was 10,000 of them, and you launched them out, and you needed them to each deliver the right package to the right place, and then disappear? It's an interesting concept. It's exciting for us to think about the science that can go into play. Thanks. Next. Oops, I should have given you a little warning on this one. This is another one having to do with a very serious problem. It has to do with wounded soldiers. 56% of war injuries are blast related, and these are real numbers. These injuries that the soldiers come back with can require long periods of either internal or external fixation until the bones recover and regrow, if they do, or perhaps it requires amputation. This is a huge problem. It's the problem of IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Well, we're looking for new materials that can help with the repairing. A new material that can be strong enough with tunable mechanical properties so that it could replace that metal brace inside, that would be degradable and go away eventually inside the body, and it would be self-neutralizing so that you wouldn't get inflammation because you have that material inside the body. And so what's been developed is a method for making this polymer. Making this polymer can be very, very tough and very strong, and yet it will go away. it will disappear within the body. Next slide. So this is Professor Becker. That's the polymer turned into a tube. That's the tube being inserted in around a gap in a bone. This is a project that's funded by DARPA and the Department of Defense, working with Houston Methodist Hospital. And they are currently conducting sheep experiments right now, and they have authorization to actually do some human trials. So this is very close to actually being able to be used to treat soldiers coming back from war injuries. And of course, it will also find its way into treating people who are injured in car accidents or shootings or other areas. In the sheep trial, which is all we've done so far, we haven't done the humans yet, the sheep, immediately after this is inserted, the sheep can bear weight on that limb. That means that if a soldier is not going to be laying in bed for weeks and weeks before they can be up and walking around. 4 weeks post-op, if we do imaging of that material, what we see is that we've had a degradation of the shell. That means the tube that we put in there has started to disappear, and the bone has regrown inside of that tube. It's been protected inside of that tube, and it can start to regrow. At 4 weeks, the sheep is up walking around, not 100%, but they're getting there, and that tube doesn't have to be taken out. After it has degraded away, it just disappears, and there's new bone regrown in there. It's very exciting to think about this one particular application, but you could use it also in other places where you have to replace maybe a part of a skull or other kinds of tissue in the face or in the where you need to have shapeable materials that can hold their form and then slowly disappear as the new bones regrow.
Would you use that for just like a common fracture of a bone, or is that more of a significant injury?
Usually in this case, we're talking about things where there's a gap. There could be a ½ an inch or an inch of missing material. And usually for a simple fracture, they can do it with external fixation, and it will regrow itself. But these gaps will not regrow on their own.
So in that big of a section, bone will eventually fuse with the other half, essentially?
What happens is that inside of that shell, we put a special material that promotes the cell growth, and that cell growth then regrows bone inside there and fuses together with the existing bone. Yeah. Yeah. Next slide. So I guess you can tell, I'm pretty proud of the University of Akron and the polymer science and polymer engineering effort there. Our students do well. That's the most important thing. We're doing some really cool science. It's not just, crazy things like structural color or disappearing parachutes. It's also things with high impact. And in all of these cases, we're working with industry, whether it's Sherwin-Williams or whether it's Morris Corporation or whether it's Houston Medical, Cleveland Clinic, in order to get biomaterials, new biomaterials out into applications. Next slide. Thank you very much, and I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm interested in how the Marcellus and Utica shale development in Northeast Ohio is going to affect the polymer business.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. I've been already involved in several discussions with, as you know, Shell has already announced their intention to make an investment of $5 billion into that area, where we have been in communications with There's a Thai investment firm that is also looking at doing a parallel effort. I think the Shell one is actually just in Pennsylvania. The Thai investment firm is actually looking at Ohio. And there was a Brazilian, Braskem was at one point looking at an investment in West Virginia. So all of that together. The opportunity to take that shale gas and to convert it into higher value materials, to make plastics out of it, to make even commodity plastics is huge, because it's better than just burning it up. It's turning it into useful chemicals. It would reduce the the transportation costs that currently exist to move things from their origination mostly in Texas and Houston area. It would reduce the transportation costs to bring those plastics up. So if you see right now that we're pretty much tied with Texas and California in plastics production, I think given the capacity in the state, we would. I'm sure that the job growth would be tremendous. Now it'll be disruptive too, because as with the shale gas, it's changed the pricing structure. But as we look at higher value products that can be produced and the additives that go into it, all of that will have a ripple effect on the polymer companies in the state.
Due to the complexity of your discipline, how many of your master's or PhD folks go into patent law?
Yeah, not very many of ours do. I think it's our students typically come in. We only take a small fraction of the ones who apply, and they're pretty much they want to do research. They get pretty well dedicated to doing research. That's one of the reasons why I think this professional master's is liable to open up to people who have broader ideas. If some of the folks that came in the professional masters could very well decide, hey, this is I really like the legal aspects of it. They'd have then the technical background. They could end up going to law school. They could also certainly I'm in discussions with the business school of how they might recruit students into the business school after this degree. So that combination of the technology and business and law is a driving force right now.
Quick comment and then a question for you. Anybody who's interested in DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Programs Agency, I heard yesterday on the radio there's a brand new book called The Imagineers of War, which is a history of DARPA, which gave us everything from the internet to Agent Orange. So it makes I think it would be a very interesting book to read. Question for you, sir.
My former boss is now the director of DARPA. Yeah, she was my boss when I first started at NIST. She was the director there.
My question is, with all these exotic research projects you're doing, what kind of opportunities are there for the university to participate in the commercialization of those, to earn some kind of profit from them?
Sure. Well, so we take a fairly, I would say, aggressive and judicious approach to patenting. We encourage faculty to file invention disclosures, and then once, that just takes the faculty's time to file an invention disclosure, and at that point we try to get provisional patent protection, which is also relatively inexpensive, and then we start working very hard on thinking about whether it's really commercializable. Is it something that actually could see an application? And we've had some notable successes. The coating of the drug-coated stent that's implanted in millions of people, that coating material was developed at the University of Akron by Joe Kennedy. And it was licensed, and it brought in licensing revenues. It was actually licensed towards the end of its patent life, and so it didn't last as long as we might have liked for it to happen. You might have seen, there was recently, like last week, maybe a week and a half ago, There was a article about Joe Kennedy also had the distinction of having, in one day, 3 new patents issued. That's the first that we know of. And certainly it's the first at the university. It's the first we've ever heard of where somebody got 3 patents in one day. One of those patents has actually been under consideration since around 2008. So it took a long time for that to happen. We believe that that material is going to be one that gets licensed fairly soon into medical device applications. And that could be a significant revenue into the university. Professor Becker, who I showed and is working on the bone regrowth materials, he's actually has a startup company that now is in its is getting its first stage and second stage investments in place. They already have connections to the market for all the material that they can produce in the first stage, and it's we expect that that's going to be another a significant advantage for the university. The university, in that case, the university has owns the patents and has rights to royalties, and we also have an equity stake in his company. So it won't pay off in the next 6 months or the next year, but if you think in the long term, these things will pay off. And if you actually look at what's happened in the past for the University of Akron, of the public universities in the state, we're actually number 3 behind Cincinnati and Ohio State. And that's pretty good for a university that doesn't have a medical school in terms of licensing revenues. That's from a Bloomberg article that that came out about 2 months ago.
We have one more question.
With regards to the bone regrowth, have you done it with cartilage, with knee replacements, for instance?
So one of the interesting things about this material is that you can change the molecular weight, the size of the molecules. You can change the way that the molecules crystallize, and that will change the mechanical properties. So one of the exciting things there is to be able to change the properties so that you could get properties better for soft tissue or better for cartilage. And so I know we're looking at we're looking at applications that go into soft, tough materials in addition to this basically structural component. So the material, this particular material will biodegrade, so it will eventually go away. So you want to use it in a place where the natural material will regrow. But we have other avenues there. Some of the materials of Joe Kennedy are very good for lack of rejection and also biocompatibility. So if you have a pacemaker, or if you have a medical device that's implanted and it needs to be encased in a material that's not going to develop holes or cracks, then that's perfect kind of material for that. Lots of applications. Great.
Thank you, Dr. Amos.
Thank you very much.
Fascinating science, fascinating research, and the future looks pretty incredible to me as we make advances in these areas. Real quick, next week's speaker is Judge Teodosio from the Court of Common Pleas in Summit County. And thank you today to our greeters, Clint Samuel. I saw, yes, there you are. Sorry, Clint, you were hiding behind Dick Pearsall. And to the audiovisual crew, Tom Page, Tom Tobin, James Field, and Ron Barnhouse, and Den Rich, thank you for being ready to step in if needed. We do appreciate that. Today's Rotabuck. Payout is $11. The jackpot, since Mr. Wooldridge won last week, is $111. You would make one of our members.
Last four. 9182.
9182. Ah.
What are the odds, huh?
The jackpot will continue to grow. And leaving you with a thought today. This is from an American president, and I'll let you guess who has said it. Truth will do well enough if left to shift for herself. She seldom has received much aid from the power of great men, to whom she is rarely known and seldom welcome. The author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. With that, we're adjourned. See everybody next week.